Hi, everybody. This week we're going to talk about some technical sides of broadcast production, specifically camera stuff, camera shot sizes, camera movements, camera framing. Um, so keep this in mind as you go through and think about your broadcast productions, whatever they may be. Having a great plan ahead of time is the only way to really succeed, right? And this will give you the vocabulary, this will give you the syntax, right, the language to better convey your vision to people, right? Or to give people their vision, right? So in TV and film, we use what's called shots when describing their production visuals. Knowing the typical types of shot sizes, moves, and framing is going to be essential to effective broadcast production. And I want you to think of a shot as how much visual information is in the camera frame at one time and how it is composed, much like a painting, right? Putting things where you want to on the screen / canvas / in the frame. And we think of a shot as one continuous camera segment and can be very short or very long. A shot will never have an edit in it. Edits are what separate shots, right? So a scene is typically put together by editing together different shots, right? And there are 6 basic shot sizes I want you to get familiar with. They go from the wide shot all the way down to the extreme close-up. They have abbreviations that are next to them. Depending on where you're working and who you're working for, you might find some variation in the terms themselves, but you're definitely going to find these general ideas for shot sizes, right? So you might want to be flexible with terms from time to time, but the ideas behind those terms are always the same, right? So when you look at your book on page 81, a wide shot is often also known as an establishing shot. It's going to be big enough to show all the action and help the viewer with the geography of where everything in the scene is. Most often the people in the shot, if any, are not filling the frame and maybe just tiny points in the information. Here are some examples of wide shots. As you can see, they're wide and big, lots of information about the scene. The characters are in them, but they're almost just part of the puzzle, right? They're not exactly the focus of any kind of shot. Moving closer, we're going to have a long shot. And a long shot tends to be used when talking specifically about people as your subjects. And means you would have the whole body basically filling the frame from top to bottom, like this. In these 2 shots, you see how the main subjects are filling the frame from the top to the bottom. There's very little space above or below them, right? You're going to go closer in. These all go in closer. A mid shot can also be known as a medium shot. Shows a smaller area than the long shot, but still has quite a bit of visual information. If there are people in the scene, then you would tend to have their head and torso shown, typically down to the waist. So you can think of this, a medium shot as a half shot, as in half a person, right? Looking at these examples, we're seeing half the person. And as we're getting closer to the subject, if the subject is people, you're getting more of their subtle facial expressions, more of them. They're becoming the centerpiece of the scene, centerpiece of the shot, right? So going closer in, we're going to go into what we call a medium close-up. It's that area right between a medium shot and a close-up. So if your subject is a person, it would tend to be a head and shoulder shot, like that. We're going to call that a medium close-up. 2 examples here. Again, getting closer to the subject's face. And then a close-up, right? When the shot is looking in detail at something in the scene. If the subject's a person, it could be just the head or just the hand. If it's a smaller object, then it tends to be where the object fills the screen, right? So you're getting close-up of one thing, like in this example, close-up of Harry Potter, close-up of a fly, close-up of a clock, close-up of a hand, right? The next step is logically the extreme close-up, when the shot is highlighting a very small detail of something on the screen to the point where nothing else is really visible, right? These are 3 examples: an eye, a dog's nose, the matchstick, top of a matchstick. These are all extreme close-ups, right? So you think about the shots that we've talked about. That's how you would choreograph, lay out, storyboard what you want to see, right? And sometimes directors will refer to these shots by the number of people in them. So a single shot is a 1-person shot. A 2 shot would be 2 people. And a 3 shot is 3 people. Once you get over 3, the numbering doesn't really apply. It becomes more or less a group shot. So here's some examples. We have a 1 shot, we got a 2 shot in the middle, And at the bottom there from the Hangover, I believe we have a 3-shot, right? So those are some examples. When you download the PowerPoint, as a PowerPoint, it will click through these while you click through them. Well, here they're all at once in the video, but you can click through them one at a time if you want to. So please note that single, 2, and 3 shots also need to be specified as wide to close-up shots to be clear and effective, right? So the single, 2, and 3 modifiers are only there to specify the number of people in them. You also need to know how much of the people to see, right? You don't want to just say, give me a 2-shot, and then they come back with a 2-shot long shot or a 2-shot wide shot, and that's not what you wanted. So you wanted a 2-shot mid shot, right? So you want to think about that. Here's some examples using those ones we just talked about. Single shot is a medium close-up. 2-shot is a long shot. 3-shot is a mid-medium shot, right? So you don't want to, you want to think about the whole picture, literally, and give all the information that you need, right? A point of view shot is also called a POV, is just what it sounds like. It's the type of shot that makes the viewer think that they're seeing exactly what the character or presenter is seeing and from the same position. So a point of view shot enables the viewer to see a specific situation or environment as if they were in the shot themselves. Here's some examples, right, of POV shots that are often designed to give the viewer this voyeuristic or the visceral sense of being in the position of the character, whoever that is, whether you're being having a gun pulled on you, whether you're riding a bike through a busy city, or you're looking up at a knife, right? These are point of view shots designed to heighten the psychology of visual language, right? So when you think about another kind of shot, it's called an OTS, or an over-the-shoulder shot. Again, it's just what it sounds like. It's a type of shot that makes the viewer think that they're there, but looking over the shoulder of a character, not being the character, but being behind the character, let's say. Instead of feeling like she is the character, it makes a viewer feel like she is there and watching as a voyeur, but not directly involved. You see this a lot. Here's some examples of over-the-shoulder shots, right? For example, I'm not Batman in that shot. I am simply there watching the Joker talk to the Batman, right? Usually a lot of stuff film like this, in sort of standard visual film language, video language, called the shot reverse shot. So a shot angle is another piece of the puzzle, right? Shots can be taken with the camera at different tilts or heights, which result in various angles. Any of the shots we've already discussed can be taken from different angles to get different effects. Think of them as how the camera is physically tilted in the shot. So imagine that you are the camera. What way would you have to tilt? Where would you have to be to see the shot the way it's being presented, right? So there are 5 basic shot angles. We're going to go through them quickly. Low all the way to oblique. So let's look at some examples, right? So a low angle is the type of shot that gives the viewer the impression they are looking up at something. So you can see from these examples, the severity of the angle may vary, but they're all considered low angle shots as the camera is physically tilted up at the subject, right? I'm tilted up at the Avengers. I'm tilted up at the Eiffel Tower, at Whoopi Goldberg in The Color Purple, right? Those are all low angle shots. The next angle we're going to talk about is an eye level angle, right? In this type of shot, the viewer is on the same level as the person or object in the shot. There is no tilt to the camera at all. It is being held flat. Again, think of yourself as the camera. For all 3 of these shots, there's no tilt to the camera. Wherever the subject is, the camera is looking straight on at them with no tilt, right? That's an eye level angle. Another kind of angle is the high angle, right? It's the opposite of the low angle. It gives the impression that we're looking down at something. As you can see from the examples here, again, the severity of the angle may vary, but they're all considered high angle shots as the camera is tilted down at the subject. Again, think of your head as the camera. In order to get these shots, you would have to be looking down on the subjects, right? So that's how you would ask for the shot to be taken if that's what you wanted. Another kind of angle that's a high angle, but a variation of it is called a bird's eye angle, right? It's the most extreme type of high angle. It gets its own designation as a result. It gives the viewer the impression or the feeling that they're high above, right on top of the action and looking down on it. Again, as in the name, like a bird hovering overhead, often used to show locations. Sometimes it's referred to as the God shot because it feels so unnatural In order to get any of these shots, you have to do something uncommon to get them, whether flying a helicopter or lean over a top of a building or somehow get a crane. So they're often considered to be special in that regard, which is why we give them their own designation, bird's eye angle examples. Another kind of angle that you can get when you think about tilting the camera is an oblique, sometimes called a Dutch, sometimes called a canted angle. It's not when the camera is tilted up or down, but rather to one side or the other. It's often used to give the sense of instability or movement or chaos. So you tilt the camera to the left or to the right. That would be called an oblique Dutch canted angle, one of those. So we've got shot sizes, we have angles. Now we want to think about what else the camera can do, which is move, right? Shots can also be taken with the camera being moved physically to get different effects. Think of how the camera is physically moving in the shot. So we thought about how it's tilted. Now think about how the camera is moving, physically moving, if it's moving at all, right? So again, imagine you are the camera. What way would you have to move to be able to get this shot the way it's being presented? There are 4 basic ones we're going to talk about. A pan shot is a type of movement that you can see hopefully in the graphic there, that the camera swivels from side to side as if on a tripod, right? A whip pan is simply that being done very quickly. You can download the PowerPoint and click on there for a video example as well. So do that if you're interested or curious or want some more information. A pan, the camera doesn't move, it just swivels, right? Think of if that were you, you'd be turning left and right, but not moving your legs, right? That's a pan, whip pan movement, right? Then we get a tilt movement, right? It's where the camera tilts up and down as if on a tripod, but doesn't move as if it has legs, right? It tilts up and down. So click on that in the PowerPoint if you want to see a video example of that. But again, these are 2 shots where the camera tilts or pivots, but doesn't move. Its legs don't move, let's put it that way, right? A zoom movement is not technically a move, but it gives that appearance, right? It's when the camera pulls in tight or pulls out wide, but doesn't actually move. Again, these first 3 shots, the camera is stationary, but movement is implied. Movement is achieved by swiveling, tilting up and down, or zooming. We've all played with the zoom wheel in our cameras, I'm sure. You can click on this link in the real PowerPoint to see examples of zooms as used in The Shining. There's quite a few zooms used in The Shining. There are also variations of the zoom. A crash zoom is a zoom that's done super quickly. A dolly zoom is when you combine 2 kinds of movement, the zoom movement and then actually moving the camera physically to give this disorienting effect that we've seen in movies quite a bit, television shows. You want to click on there to see more of the dolly zoom and see exactly what I'm talking about. A tracking shot or a dolly shot is when the camera physically moves through a scene on tracks via what they call a dolly, right? It's how a shot can move through a scene and or with characters. So the camera, think of it as a following shot. The camera follows a character, right? And the basic effect of a tracking dolly shot can also be achieved by the use of Steadicam, which uses no tracks and appears to fly through the scene and doesn't, like I said, rely on tracks on the ground. So here are some great examples of Steadicam shots and dolly shots. Because this is visual, I want you to download the PowerPoint and look at them yourself. I'll put the links directly into the folder as well. So here's a good example here of the difference between dolly and zoom shots. Sometimes seeing is believing, so I hope you check those out. So remember that every shot is comprised of 3 very basic decisions. The size, how big is the shot, how much information am I getting? The angle, from what angle am I looking at this shot? And the movement. Even if that movement is none, right? There's no movement in the shot, that's still a decision about movement, right? So you're still making decisions. And how and why these decisions are made are incredibly important as they determine the effect the visual production will have on the audience, right? And you want to think about basic composition. So when you're framing a person in a shot, you traditionally make sure you frame it so to give the person enough what they call looking room, and don't cram them into one side so they look like they're bumped up against a wall. And these examples here you can see, right? Putting the subject on the far right gives them something or somewhere to look. Putting them on the left is uncomfortable and typically not the effect you're looking for, right? So you also want to think about the idea with headroom. right? When you traditionally make certain that you frame it, you traditionally make certain that you frame your shot so to give the person appropriate headroom. So they're neither too close to the top or too close to the bottom of the frame. They're sort of just right, just in the middle, right? So we have looking room, we have headroom. Of course, both of these are rules that can be broken for stylistic reasons, but typically they're followed for good frame composition to basic broadcast production. There's a show like Mr. Robot that loves to break these rules, right? And here's some links for it and also just some visual examples. But they do that for effect, and they're definitely breaking them on purpose, right? You have to know the rules to break the rules. You wouldn't want to get a job, have your first day, and start framing, shooting things like Mr. Robot if it's not Mr. Robot, right? Unless you were told to do so, unless you were part of that creative decision, right? So don't go breaking rules until you know what the rules are. There's also an idea, speaking of rules, called the rule of thirds. And it's this concept of framing that uses imaginary horizontal lines dividing the frame into three, and then three imaginary vertical lines doing the same, right? It's actually, think about the lines. When you say three, I guess what I'm trying to say is there are three, they're not three lines, they're dividing them into three boxes, right? So it's 369 boxes on the screen. They're created by these lines, these imaginary lines, right? As you can see here, we've created and the cheetah's head is right in the top third, right? So oftentimes this is based on the idea that the thought is when you look at a picture, the intersection of these lines is the place a viewer's eye most naturally looks at. So putting things at the most interest in one of these spots will make your brain feel comfortable with the frame's composition. So the idea is, like even on Mr. Robot, if we went back and looked, you would see that they're still using the rule of thirds. So somewhere where those lines intersect is typically where you might want to put something that you want people to look at, right? Depth of field is a term that refers to how much of the frame contents are in focus. So there's a short, shallow depth of field as just part of the contents in the screen are in focus, while a long or deep depth of field has most, if not all, of the contents in focus. Here are some examples of shallow depth of field. Only certain things are focused. The hand of the guy on the ground, the toy in the foreground, the Eiffel Tower little toy in the front, the gun barrel, the boy in the back. These are all what we call short or shallow depth of field because we're using focus to manipulate viewer attention, right? So there might be a shot you have in mind where you want to make sure that you use a shallow depth of field to highlight, say, whatever's in someone's hand or the cock of their eyebrow or a barrel of a gun, right? And then you have something called looking at long, deep depth of field where everything is basically in focus. These three shots here have lots of things, especially the bottom two, in the frame composition that are basically all in focus. The Great Gatsby is a little fuzzier in the back, but it's not such a point that you would think it's short focus, right? So I'm not being really directing my attention. My attention is not really being directed as much as I'm showing you what's the scene, right? So that would be a long depth of field when you want to have everything basically in the same focus. So what I want you to do is take the shot sizes, moves, and framing quiz for this week, and then also, of course, participate in this week's discussion board. And definitely check out the links I'm going to post. Definitely check out the PowerPoint itself to see those links. Again, this is a very visual chapter, and I think it would help to see the examples that I posted. So thank you for your attention, and I will see you on the boards.